Hey guys, in this video we're talking about a $150 detail that literally anyone can do no matter where you're at in your detailing business and make money doing this. But we're also talking about how to, in some sense, systematize your detailing process so that you can get more done in less time and ultimately make more money. Now, just for some context for this situation, this is a Mini Cooper that I do see on a regular basis. And of course, I detail the interior about twice a year, once in the wintertime and once in the summertime. So what I'm doing here is a very, very basic detail. It's not the customer's daily driver, so the interior never gets too dirty, but the outside is really what I see on a more regular basis as far as a maintenance plan goes. But this interior represents something that is really representative, in my opinion, of most vehicles that people see in the detailing world. And while this is going to be a bit of a case-by-case basis, it is very representative of the vehicles that I see on a regular basis. So let me explain what I mean by that. This interior of the Mini Cooper represents something that's really not very dirty. However, there's definitely surface dirt, dust, visual dirt. You can see all over the interior of the car, but there's nothing excessive. And then more than that, there's nothing that's really been sitting there for a crazy long amount of time. If you've detailed cars really at any level or for any period of time, you know that really the kicker or the really big differentiator between what's going to take a long time and what's going to take a relatively short amount of time when it comes to detailing and cleaning up dirt and all this sort of stuff is really the length of time that the dirt has been there. It's not even that much about how much dirt is there. Of course, that is a variable, but much like the engine detailing, if you've ever detailed an engine, the surface dirt that's on the engine looks really serious. It looks like there's a lot there, but you realize when you get into the engine detail that it's actually really easy to clean. In fact, most of the dirt comes off just with the pressure of the degreaser or the water you're using, and it makes your job very, very easy. You don't have to think about it very hard. You don't have to use a lot of creative problem solving. You don't even have to use a lot of energy as it is. And in many ways, this is what this car represents. Because there's only a surface level or a surface amount of dirt here, I'm able to do kind of what I call, or use what I would call my sort of systematized detailing process. And while I've pieced different parts of this together in other videos, I'll walk through it in a more step-by-step manner here. Basically, what this car represents is a zero thought process for me. Because none of this dirt is going to be particularly hard to remove, though yes, it is there, but because I detail it on twice a year, kind of hit the reset button twice a year, and this isn't the daily driver, all this stuff is very easy to remove, I can kind of move into autopilot mode when I'm doing this. And basically, this not literally, but almost like my subconscious takes over, because it's like riding a bike. You just know how to do it without thinking about it. And in many ways, that's what this kind of detail represents, because I've implemented a specific type of system to my detailing process. So let's just break that system down here so you guys understand the context. So there's three really main parts to this system, three kind of overall overarching themes here, and three ways to approach this that I would kind of stack on top of each other. And it is worth noting and repeating that really what I mean when I say systematizing things is this is not always possible, simply because obviously detailing is a very case by case, but what you find over the long term, it's kind of like any statistician is going to take a cluster of data points and then come to a conclusion. You never take like a random sample of like 100 people. It's really not enough. You can get something called a sampling bias. It's not a large enough number to come to a proper conclusion about any given variable affecting any given situation. So it's kind of the same thing with this. I have kind of created these systems that surround specific detailing jobs, and generally I separate out or categorize those detailing jobs based on the amount of dirt, not necessarily the size of the vehicle or the type of the vehicle, but just based on the size of the dirt. And really what ends up happening is over the long term, and I think probably most people can relate to this, in your detailing business, what you find is the majority of the time, the type of car you're detailing is not that dirty, or it's just what you would call averagely dirty. It's not every day that you're getting the disgusting minivan, and it's not every day that you're getting the unbelievably untouched, clear coat or paint protection film, ceramic coating protected Lamborghini. Like, every day looks a little bit different, but probably the 80-20 rule applies for you here in that 80% of the time, you're probably seeing just average daily drivers, and 20% of the time, you're finding yourself in those tails of the distribution or in the extremes. And the great thing about finding yourself in this sort of average daily driver vehicle is that while yes, they do all differ at a certain level, you find that they probably all, depending on, of course, the size, they probably all take you around the same time frame to accomplish. So when it comes to average details, whether or not they fall on this continuum of more dirty or less dirty, if they fall into this kind of overwhelming 80% or average, and of course it would be easier to analyze this if we were looking at it on a sort of like bell curve or an average, a normal distribution, what you find is most of those average details, most of the details you see fall in the center of the distribution. They don't exist in the extremes. And even if they take, 20 minutes more here or 20 minutes less here, they fall within the same time frames, and therefore they require a lot of the same amount of effort or work or things that you're putting forth. And because of that, this type of 80% of your details, or this type of detail that you see most frequently, is a really good opportunity for you to wrap a system around it that ends up letting you more or less streamline a lot of the things that you're doing so that you're not wasting time here and there doing other things that don't matter and ending up, wasting your customers' time as well as lowering your effective hourly rate. The very first thing when you're developing a system like this in your average, say, $150 detail is a compartmentalized approach, meaning I put things in boxes. Obviously, you guys saw I was starting with the door panels there. When I am on the door panel, I am solely thinking about this, addressing this. Nothing else is in my head. I'm attacking this as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I move inward. I hit the little panels, the plastic panels below that my feet are dragging over, the customer's feet are dragging in and out of. Steering wheel, speedometer, console area. You guys see I'm hitting the radio, the buttons, the centerpiece area. I'm going to move down and back into the console area here. This is kind of my compartmentalized approach. What this allows you to do is more or less, I'd say, create efficiency more than anything else. I think you could think of it like McDonald's. You have each person doing a singular job. They're flipping the burger, or they're putting it together, or they're running the drive-through, or they're running the register. It's kind of like maybe an assembly line approach. You have one particular person doing one particular job. It is absolutely beneficial for you to literally list out on paper, as I've actually done this. I've probably done this 50 different times in my detailing experience. Listing out on paper systematized approaches to your details. One of the great ways to do this is to create a sort of T-chart, and on one side you write down what's really time consuming, what consistently takes more time, and on the right side you can put what consistently takes very little time. And you basically take these kind of what would I say, contrasts, and you can say, okay, how can I create systems around the things that take most of the time away from me and most of my focus away from me, so that I can basically create as an efficient as possible process around this, so that I'm lowering, once again, the amount of time I'm spending. It also, I'll say, is just really good for your overall mental status as you're detailing. A lot of times it's really easy to get super annoyed and super frustrated when you're detailing a car, and by the end of it, you're just like, I'm so ready to go home, because the frustration comes in when your expectation basically isn't met. What I mean by that is you go into the detail with a certain expectation of what you're going to have to do and what you're not going to have to do. And what ends up happening when you don't have this written out system that kind of comes with experience and comes with time, what happens when you don't have that is you come in with a certain expectation of what you're going to have to do, and then along the way, there's 10 other things that end up coming up that you had to do that you weren't expecting you were going to have to do, because either you didn't know that area of the car even existed, or it caught your eye and you're like, man, I've never even detailed this part before, but I think my customer might notice this. And along the way, there's just these tiny little things that end up sucking your time and, of course, creating this wider and wider gap between what you expected and then what the reality was. So again, by the end of the detail, not only did you waste a bunch of time and you were there for 2 hours more than you thought you were going to be, but you're also really pissed off. And that ends up being just a recipe for disaster, because sometimes it's hard enough to motivate yourself in the first place, especially if you're in the beginning stages of your business and you're not experiencing a bunch of calls coming in. It's hard enough to motivate yourself to continue working and building something when you can't connect the dots moving forward. But if you start experiencing this frustration when you're in the middle of this because you don't have this systematized approach where there's a clear pattern of what you're going to do going into the detail, it's just a recipe for serious burnout and something that you're not going to be able to sustain over the long term. So compartmentalization, or just compartmentalizing the area of the detail that you're working on at any given time, is going to be the first step to kind of creating this system, because it's just going to narrow your focus into the one thing you need to be focused on. And this is going to conserve your mental energy and your brain cycles, but it's also just going to conserve your energy in general, because you're not, jumping around to other things. Basically, you're closing the loop before you move on to anything else. You don't want to leave these loops open. So once the driver's side door is done, I'm moving on. I'm not worried about it again. The second thing after just compartmentalizing my any given particular area of the car I'm working on is I generally keep under 5 tools with me at any given time when I'm detailing the interior of, once again, the average condition vehicle, averagely dirty vehicle, the 80% vehicles of what you're going to see. The reason I like to keep under 5 tools, which, by the way, generally speaking, number 1, it's my steamer. Number 2, it's a specific microfiber towels, and I have many of them. Number 3, it's my detailing brushes. Number 4, it's my non-abrasive scrub pad. And number 5, it's my magic eraser. And the reason for that, I think, goes against what a lot of probably guys in the beginning stages of their business think. In many ways, the detailing industry is made up of an overwhelming undercurrent of an attitude that says the more the merrier, the more products, the more tools, the better you're going to be. While there is some truth to that, and I try not to exist in the extremes, it's like, yes, I have a garage full of tons of tools and products, but when I'm actually detailing on these 80% vehicles that I see, that are the majority of what makes up my business, just the average dirty, generally on the cleaner side, the more I can simplify the tools and products that I am allowed to even reach for at any given time, because it's all I have on me, the easier my life becomes, the quicker my detail becomes, the more money I end up making. It's much less frustrating. There is this sort of counterintuitive thing that I think a lot of guys, maybe who are beginning in the business, don't realize, but in many ways, when you purchase the expensive stuff, you actually you end up reaching for it because you're trying to justify the money you spent on it to yourself, even though you're probably realizing you don't need it quite as much as you thought you did. But in many ways, those expensive pieces of machinery actually slow you down for the majority of vehicles that you're seeing. Again, I'm glad I have my extractor and my more expensive tools when I'm detailing really gross vehicles that require that, when I decide to take those jobs on. But for the most part, they are nothing more than something that gets in the way of the 80%. And this is kind of where I think we undervalue the power of focus. And this is the point I'm making in the $150 detail anyone can do, because 80% of your details are going to be made up of not extreme details, but just very average details. This idea that you need to hold off starting your business until you have these expensive things just doesn't stand up next to the numbers. It doesn't make sense next to the numbers. At worst, you will turn away 20% of the people in the beginning stages who have absolutely disgusting, like wretched cars that you don't have the means to correct or detail at any certain level. Now, I know that this might be a bit of an oversimplification simply because everybody starts in a different place in their detailing business. And go ahead and comment below if you agree with what I'm saying right now. And comment below if you disagree. If your experience is completely different and you're like, wait a second, I do not see average vehicles. I see disgusting hammered vehicles on a daily basis. It's what makes up 80% of my business, not the 20%. Go ahead and comment below and let me know that, because I'd like to know where you guys are at, just to know if my experience here extends to anyone other than just myself. So that being said, this is why I say this is a $150 detail anyone can do, because at most, the expensive piece of machinery that I'm using here is my steamer. Now, that leads me into kind of the second part of my second point here in this systematizing strategy, being only using under 5 tools, but at the same time, generally speaking, you'll find 1 or 2 of those tools is what you reach for, again, 80% of the time, and the other tools, while still simple, are what you reach for 20% of the time. As you guys can see, the steamer is probably my most go-to piece of machinery that exists in my arsenal. And I think over time, what you guys will begin to find as well is that you do have, of course, this probably under 5 list, or 5 or under list of things that you reach for most. But even within that list, you have 1 or 2 tools that you reach for constantly, that it's like, I could not possibly exist in the detailing industry without this tool. For me, absolutely, it is the steamer. I know guys who talk about the fact that they don't use their steamer very much because they feel like it adds more work for them. I've never related to that. I've never felt like that. But for me, it is absolutely the steamer. And this is, again, that 80-20 rule applying even within the sort of 80-20 rule that we already brought up. It's just interesting to me that you can kind of find this phenomenon happening in every part of your business. And this is why I talk about writing things down and making a list and kind of almost getting what's in your head or what's in your experience onto paper and out of your head so you can look at it. Because once again, one of the most helpful things that I've done in my detailing business that I continue to do is highlighting on paper the areas that, number 1, take a lot of time for me. Number 2, the things I reach for most. Number 3, the types of vehicles I see the most. Number 4, the types of interactions with my customers, the types of objections that most customers have. When I can get these things out of my head and onto paper, it's much, much easier to develop solutions to these things. So anyway, that being said, the third major point here when I'm talking about systematizing, number 1 was compartmentalizing. Number 2 was using under 5 tools. And once again, this all applies for the average condition vehicles that I believe makes up generally the 80% of people's detailing businesses. And even within those under 5 tools, or that five main list, you're going to find 1 or 2 that you reach for constantly. Number 3, you guys see, in many ways, I work from the outside in. Now, this is not a hard and fast, exact black and white rule, because obviously I did the door jambs here after I did the door panels, console area, a few parts of the interior. But basically what I like to do is start outside, move inward. Sometimes I'll begin the detail. If it's an interior detail and I have to do the door jambs, I'll begin with the door jambs because, yes, you're going to get a little bit of overspray on the interiors. But you want to make sure you're moving in a logical way, and I like moving from the outside in simply because that way, as I move inward, as I'm cleaning outside and that overspray is getting in, that dust, those flurries are getting inside, those areas that are being sprayed or getting kind of having dust knocked up, those areas haven't been cleaned or detailed yet. And therefore, I have this system where I'm not having to go back over things all the time and screw myself up, annoy myself, do things over again, all that sort of stuff. This is a huge time waster that I think people radically underestimate, but it's something that needs to be said. So, in developing your system, I think there's some logical things as far as the process, which again is moving from the outside in, that I'm talking about the process that you use as far as what you go from A to B to C. There's some logical things to consider. Of course, number 1, gravity. Everything you do falls to the bottom. It's why in every single video you guys see that I do carpets last. When I say last, I don't mean literally last. Of course, I think I address the windows and then the final detail or the final wipe down or the final interior protectant. Those are the 2 things that are legitimately, literally last. But as far as the, what would I say, maybe time-consuming, difficult, more pressing detailing areas, more obvious detailing areas that I do last or that I consider part of the last part of my details, it is absolutely the carpet shampooing, the carpet cleaning. So as you guys see, that's what I'm doing right this second. And in talking to a lot of different detailers and a lot of guys who are starting these businesses, I do find that I think I kind of used to assume that the system I used or the sequence or the process, the step-by-step that I had was pretty universal. And I know a lot of guys who do it very differently. I know guys who do the carpets as their first thing. And while I still can't say I totally understand that, that is not what I would do. It's not necessarily what I suggest doing, but if that is what you do and it works for you and your customers are happy with you, then numbers don't lie. If you're making money in your detailing business and you're creating reoccurring revenue with maintenance clients, then hey, numbers don't lie. Keep doing what you're doing. But I can offer this. I think a general 30,000 foot view good system as far as a process goes is something like this. Number one, door jambs, door panels. These are the outermost areas of the vehicle. They're also areas, particularly the door jambs, that sometimes are going to splatter dirt. You're dealing with grease. You're dealing with overspray as far as water is concerned. So starting there and letting that kind of overspray or dirt sling on these areas that haven't yet been detailed does make logical sense. Secondly, I like to compartmentalize, again, point one, the hard rubber, vinyl, leathers, and plastics. And I kind of put all of these into one group here. And I don't mean necessarily the leather seats, but you guys see what I end up doing is going around the interior of the car from the dashboard, steering wheel, speedometer, radio area, to the console, to the sides of the seats, to the running boards, to the backs of the leather seats as I move to the back, and any hard vinyl, rubber, leathers, and plastics in the interior on the sides, kind of moving down. Those are the areas I like to attack next. After that, I want to go ahead and do a vacuum because I'm going to move to fabric or upholsteries or cloth, and this includes the carpets as well as the seats if the seats are upholstery. But I always like to do carpets before seats simply because when I'm detailing carpets, particularly on bigger cars, a lot of times it's necessary for me to actually get into the car, move around. I'm wearing tennis shoes. And so I like to do the carpets first because seats are pretty easy to hit standing outside of the car. This way, as I'm stepping around and I'm shampooing the carpets, I can kind of shampoo one, stand on the other side, and then reverse so that I'm not necessarily getting, if that makes sense, I guess. I can stand outside the car, stand inside the car, depending on what I need to do. Whenever the carpet gets dirty, if my foot steps on the carpet, I already have all my stuff to clean it up really quickly. Once again, the way I'm thinking about this is I don't want to have to go back over things. When I get done with that vacuum and then, of course, that shampoo, I move to the cloth seats, but if they are leather, like in this scenario, I'm going to move to the leather seats. Once again, this is total compartmentalization. I'm going to hit it all in one go. I'm not going to say, what would I say, shampoo the carpets with my, upholstery brush and then move to the cloth seats of that same area of the car. I'm going to move from the driver's carpet to the back carpet to the passenger side carpet to the back passenger side carpet. Then I'm going to move to the seats. I like to keep all things done in kind of one compartment. I don't want to have to keep a bunch of different tools, 2 different upholstery brushes, 3 different microfiber towels, 2 different products that I'm using on this, that, and the other. I want to do it all in one fell swoop because it kind of just lowers the amount of things I have to think about. Once again, kind of automating things, systematizing things. So after the carpets, moving to the leather seats, I go ahead and get those done at every level, meaning the general area of the seats as well as all of the seams. I make sure I take care of all of that. Sometimes I use my steamer, sometimes I use a toothbrush, detailing brush, sometimes I use parts of like a little dental picking kit, all that sort of stuff. Then after that, I think, in this particular scenario, there's nothing else to do other than the interior windows and then finish the interior with any sort of interior finishing protectant that you want to use. So guys, if you're wanting to see the products and the tools used in this video, which are super simple and actually very inexpensive, the most expensive thing in this video is going to be the steamer that I used, but I'm going to hook up a detailing steamer that people love below in the YouTube description box that's much more affordable. It's actually under $200, and people use this steamer as kind of like their dedicated auto detailing steamer, especially in their beginning stages of their business. So if you guys want to see the products and the tools that I used in this video and that I use for probably 80% of details, they're just kind of standard staple products and tools, check out the YouTube description box below. There'll be Amazon affiliate links as well as links to specific detailing websites that I use that are also affiliate links, of course. And if you like videos like this that major on business concept and even efficiency and systematizing your detailing processes, then smash the like button below this video so that I know you guys appreciate this kind of content and that it's actually helping you. You could even leave me a comment below and tell me how this is helping you if you're feeling really generous today and you want to take some time to not only let other people know what you're doing and what you're implementing that is helping you greatly, but it also gives me a little motivation and encouragement to keep these types of videos going. And of course, you can let me know any videos you'd like to see in the future as well. Guys, as always, thank you so much for being involved. And from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, keep working hard, and I will see you guys in the next video.